Welcome to this online lecture session of the course Engineering Thermodynamics. In the last lecture, we had discussion on two other forms of energy which we have called as nothing but heat and power. However, both these forms of energy have characteristics that these will be only coming into picture while some thermodynamic process is happening, and these actually move across the boundary. So that's why many times we call these type of energies as heat transfer and work transfer also. Okay. So while a system is there in thermodynamic equilibrium state, at that time our heat and work will be equal to 0. And these are nothing but the inexact differentials. Because of that, what we have to do while we are integrating in order to find out complete work done or complete heat transfer between two thermodynamic states, this integration will also depend upon the path of the process. Okay. Apart from that, we have seen the law of conservation of energy, and in the law of conservation of energy, we have given a generalized equation that net rate of heat transfer minus net rate of work transfer is nothing but equal to change in energy of the system, where net rate of heat transfer is nothing but equal to Q in minus Q out, and net rate of work transfer is equal to W out minus W in, where W out is referred to as work done by the system and W in is referred to as work done on the system. After that, taken some sign conventions. So Q in we have considered as positive and Q out we have considered negative. In the same way, we have considered that work done by the system as positive and work done on the system as negative. Okay. So now let me further go into more details. So let me now take up the another very important law in thermodynamics, which we call as nothing but first law of thermodynamics. Okay. So if we talk in general sense, first law of thermodynamics is nothing but law of conservation of energy. Okay. And different statements are given for first law of thermodynamics, but these different statements are nothing but the different variants of law of conservation of energy only. Okay. So if we historically see, actually first law of thermodynamics has first come into consideration. After that, the law of conservation of energy is actually defined. Okay. So it means historically the origin of first law of thermodynamics is before the law of conservation of energy. Okay. So now there are different variants of first law of thermodynamics, and these are nothing but derived from the, or I should say, the different variants of law of conservation of energy only. Okay. So one of the statement now I'll be writing that if we have, say, for an adiabatic process, if I have an adiabatic process and this process is such that our system is changing between specified state. So it means whatever the initial and final state of the system are there, these are remaining same, and we are having some adiabatic process. So I can I'll just remove this word n, rather I'll say for number of adiabatic processes. Okay, so let me write for number of adiabatic processes. If I have a system which is changing between two specified states, okay, so what we will be having, the amount of work done, whatever I'll be getting, amount of work done, that will be nothing but independent of nature of system and kind of the process. Okay, so this is one of the statement of first law of thermodynamics. So what we are saying now, I have just specifically written this statement in 4 different parts. So let me highlight the different parts. First part is we are having number of adiabatic processes, and for all these adiabatic processes, if the system is changing between specified states, the meaning of this, if I write some thermodynamic state 1 as initial state, 2 as final state, these 1 and 2 are remaining same for each and every process. Okay. So what we are saying that in this particular case, what will be happening, amount of work done will be nothing but independent of nature of the system, whatever the type of system we are having, and kind of the process. So that is a very, very generic statement. So for example, if I represent on a PV diagram, say this is my initial state, this is my final state 2. So what I am saying that if my process is adiabatic, okay, so let us consider that this adiabatic process is now happening in number of different ways. Okay, so if it is happening in number of different ways, but if our system is changing between specified states, in that case what will be happening, whatever the amount of work done we will be having, that will be nothing but independent of nature of the system and kind of the process. Okay, so this is a simple statement which mathematically you can easily prove. So mathematically, if you see, we have already seen that Q net minus W net is equal to delta E, change in energy of the system. Okay. So if we are talking about the process to be adiabatic, in that case, Q will be equal to 0 and net amount of work done will be nothing but equal to minus of change in energy of the system. Okay. So now we know that in this particular statement, what is happening, net work done is nothing but equal to net rate of energy change. And if our thermodynamic states are specific, okay, it means if our initial and final thermodynamic states are not changing, in that case, delta E of the system will be same everywhere, irrespective of the type of the process. So that's why we refer this general statement that if we are having adiabatic processes which are occurring in say different ways, but if system is changing between the specified states, then amount of work done will be independent of the nature of the system and kind of the process. Okay, so that is one statement, and the origin of this particular statement is nothing but this comes from Joule's experiment. Okay, so Joule has performed one experiment somewhere in the early 19th century, and so based on that experiment, actually this particular statement for first law of thermodynamics is derived, and historically the first law of thermodynamics has come before, and after that the general law of conservation of energy is defined. Okay, now another particular statement of first law of thermodynamics is also there, and that statement is actually specific to the cyclic processes. So already you people know that if we are having a thermodynamic cyclic process, in that case what will be happening, the initial and final energy of the initial and final state of the system will be same. So because of that, delta E will be equal to 0. So it means I can simply say that if I have del Q and if I have cyclic integral of del Q, so it means this will be representing the net amount of heat transfer in a cyclic process. Okay, so cyclic integral of delta Q will be equal to nothing but cyclic integral of delta W. So over here you can see I am putting this integral, and then over this integration sign I am actually putting one additional circle. So that additional circle is actually specifying that our integral whatever we are performing, that is nothing but a cyclic integral. Okay, so the another statement for first law of thermodynamics is nothing but that cyclic integral of delta Q is equal to cyclic integral of delta W. So it means we are over here talking about the amount of heat transfer and amount of work transfer. So for a cyclic process, net amount of heat transfer will be equal to nothing but net amount of work transfer. Okay. However, if we are going for in general any process which is not a cyclic process, then obviously whatever the statement we have seen for law of conservation of energy, Q net minus W net equal to delta E of the system, that particular statement will be applicable. Okay, so this statement is nothing but the law of conservation of energy for any process is nothing but what we call as our first law of thermodynamics. Okay, so now we know that E is nothing but equal to internal energy plus kinetic energy plus potential energy. Okay, so for many times we will be finding a situation. So the very first thing we are considering over here that we are having closed system. So if we are having closed system, so for closed system many times we will be finding that our net change of kinetic energy, delta kinetic energy will be equal to 0. At the same point of time, change of potential energy will also be equal to 0. Why? Because if we are having closed system, then obviously we will not be having any significant macroscopic motion of the substance. So because of that, kinetic energy will be negligible. At the same point of time, our potential energy, because our elevation, if it is not changing, so in that case this change of potential energy will also be equal to 0. Okay, so if change of kinetic energy and change of potential energy is equal to 0, in that case I can simply write that my Q net minus W net for a closed system considering negligible kinetic energy and potential energy, we will be having Q net minus W net will be equal to delta U. Okay, so this will be one important statement which will be applicable for our closed systems. Okay, and for open system, we will be having one more additional term where we will be having actually the involvement of mass transfer and transfer of energy because of the mass also. So that we will try to see in our subsequent lectures. Okay, so now what I will do, I will now try to take up some specific examples in order to deal with our thermodynamic systems. Okay, so what I will do, let me first take up now an example of a piston cylinder system. So let us consider that we are having one cylinder and here we are having one piston. Okay, and in this piston cylinder arrangement, what we have over here with the top of this particular cylinder, we have one spring over here. Okay, so what we are having over here, we have some spring over here. So let us consider that K is the stiffness of this spring, and let us consider that this piston is actually displacing in upward direction. So X is, say, the displacement of the piston, and inside this we have some gas over here, and this gas obviously will be applying certain amount of pressure. So let us consider P is the pressure applied by the gas. Okay, and apart from that, we will consider that, say, this piston is having mass MP is the mass of the piston, A is the cross-sectional area of the piston. Okay, and now let us consider that outside pressure, what we are having outside pressure is, say, P naught. Okay, P naught is nothing but our surrounding pressure, and let us consider we are adding some force F which is also acting on our piston. Okay, now if I say that my piston is moving in the upward direction, so ultimately what is happening, my gas pressure is more in comparison to whatever the forces which are acting from the external side. Okay, so because of that, our piston is actually moving in upward direction. Okay, so now if I have to draw the free body diagram of the piston, so what will be happening over this piston, I will be having this F1 force in the downward direction, sorry, F force in the downward direction. Then because now while the piston will be moving in upward direction, our spring will be compressed. So because of that, we will be having some Kx spring force in the downward direction. And now if I consider that, say, some location over here which represents the x naught displacement with reference to the bottom, say that displacement x naught represents the neutral position of the spring. So if I say that I have some any specific location x naught from the bottom of the cylinder at which our spring is at neutral position. So because of that, my spring force will be nothing but equal to x minus x naught. Okay, so this is very important point. What we are considering, that we are considering the spring is having neutral position corresponding to some location x naught. So because of that, my spring force will be k times x minus x naught. Okay. Now, what additionally we are having? Additionally, we are having some P naught pressure which is acting on the top surface of the piston. So because of this P naught, we will be having some force that will be nothing but equal to P naught times A. Okay. Now, what we will be having, because we are having this system, so the mass of the system is also there. Piston is having MP mass. So because of that, weight of piston will be also acting in downward direction, and that weight will be MP into G. Now you can see clearly that our piston is actually moving in the upward direction. So because of that, we will be having one inertia force component MP into x double dot in the downward direction. So if our x is a displacement, so x double dot will be nothing but our inertia force. Okay, and in the inside, what we are having, we have actually P as pressure. So this pressure will be actually giving certain amount of force in the upward direction. So that pressure will be nothing but P times A. Okay, so P times A we will be having as nothing but our the force in upward direction which is exerted by the gas pressure. Okay, so now for this particular situation, if you write the sum of all downward force is equal to sum of the upward forces, in that case what will be happening? We will be finding a situation that P into A will be equal to nothing but K times x minus x naught plus F plus P naught into A plus P naught into A plus MP into G. Okay, and we will be having plus MP into x double dot. Okay, so this is now our force balance for this particular situation. Now one important thing we have to consider over here, that in this particular situation what will be happening, if we say our process is nothing but quasi-static. If we call our process to be quasi-static, in that case what will be happening? We know that quasi-static process is nothing but very slow process. Okay, so for very slow process, our acceleration will be nearly equal to 0. If we are calling our process to be quasi-static, for that our acceleration term will be nearly equal to 0, and finally we will be finding our expression as P times A will be equal to K into F minus X naught plus F plus P naught A plus MP into G. Okay, and now if you divide throughout by area, we will be finding, I am writing on the next slide, P as nothing but equal to K times minus X naught divided by A plus F by A plus P naught plus MP into G divided by A. Okay, now if you carefully see this particular equation, you will be finding that P is equal to what I can do over here now, I can actually multiply and divide over here in this particular equation. I can do multiplication and division by area. So if I do this, finally I'll be finding this K, so A into X. I have now two multiplication terms. One is A into X and I have minus A into X naught. Okay, so A into X will be nothing but my area of cross section into displacement. This will be my volume, instantaneous volume at that particular instant where we are having x displacement, and A into x naught is nothing but my volume corresponding to the equilibrium state of the spring. Okay, so now what will be happening? I can write this equation as P as nothing but equal to K divided by, in the denominator A into A will be become A square, and in the numerator A into X I will be writing as V. So it means K by A square into V minus K by A square into V naught plus F by A plus P naught plus MPG divided by A. So now if you carefully see this particular equation, you will be finding that all these terms over here are nothing but constant. Okay, because spring stiffness, volume at which it is neutral, and area of the piston, then whatever the constant force which is acting on the piston externally, surrounding pressure, mass of piston. So everything over here we are having nothing but constant. So it means I can write this entire term as C1. So if I write this entire term as C1, and in this particular second thing you can see that V is our volume, which is a variable or property of the system, and K by A square is once again a constant. Okay, so this constant let me write as C2. So finally I'll be finding the expression that P equal to C1 plus C2 times V. Okay, so it means that if in a piston cylinder system a spring is attached, so what will be happening? While spring is in contact with the piston cylinder, we will be having linear relationship in between our pressure and volume, and we will be having this C2 as nothing but K by A square. So this will be our slope of the line. Okay, so if I now plot this equation, P equal to C1 plus C2 into V, where C2 is nothing but K by A square, on my PV diagram. So you can see that I told that initially I have some high pressure gas. So this is my state 1, and then while the expansion is taking place, so during the expansion actually we will be having change in pressure of the system, so decrease in pressure of the system, and at the same point of time we will be having actually increase of volume. So we will be having this line, and this line will be nothing but a straight line. Okay, so we will be having the relationship in between pressure and volume as our straight line. Okay, and one important thing we will be having over here, that if I try to find out the slope of this line, so slope of this line will be nothing but equal to K divided by A square. Okay, so this is one very important finding, that if we are having a spring which is adhered to our system, in that case to our piston cylinder system, so in that case we will be having actually K by A square as our slope, and we will be having a straight line which will be representing this process. Okay, now let us take one more case where we have cylinder, we have piston, and what we have done, this piston is actually tightly held at some particular location with the help of a screw. So we are having one external adjustment screw, and that external adjustment screw is actually holding this piston over here at this particular location. Okay, and now once again, say P naught is surrounding pressure, say MP is mass of the piston, and let us consider that F is some force which is acting on the system. So it's a constant force. Okay, and inside pressure obviously we will be considering as say P, and inside pressure is high, very high in comparison to outside external forces. Okay, so now in this particular case what will be happening, when I'll be removing this particular screw, I'll be having immediate instantaneous rapid displacement of the piston. Okay, so because of this rapid instantaneous displacement of the piston, what will be happening, we will be having kind of oscillatory variation of pressure within our system. Okay, so let me do over here, let me define one term P external for this particular case. Let me define P external as the external force acting on this gaseous medium because of the different forces which are over here. Okay, so what I am saying, P external will be nothing but F divided by A, because F is our one of the external force. Once again, surrounding pressure is acting, plus P naught plus MP into G divided by A. Okay, so these are the different forces which are acting on our external forces which are acting on our system. So because of that, we will be having actually this pressure, overall pressure, whatever will be acting, that I am calling as nothing but P external. And obviously, what I am saying, that this P external is very small in comparison to our P. So where P is actually gas pressure in cylinder. Okay. So now what will be happening, if you try to see, if you remove this screw, so upon the removal of the screw, if you just try to see the variation of pressure of gas with time, we will be finding that this is my external pressure. Okay, so you can see that this external pressure, in this particular external pressure, each and every term is constant parameter. F is constant, area is constant, P naught MPG is constant. So it means this external force will be remaining constant with the time. Okay. However, while our phenomenon will start, we will remove the screw. So this was the situation of initial pressure. When we have removed the screw, we will be having sudden displacement, and because of the sudden displacement, there is sudden fall of pressure. Then once again it will regain pressure, and it will keep on oscillating unless or until for large time it is actually reaching to a pressure situation of equal to that of the external pressure. So once our pressure is reaching identical to that of the external pressure, under that situation, then our cylinder will be in nothing but steady situation. Okay, so now what will be happening over here, if you try to see the definition of our work, so we know that work is nothing but equal to P into dV and integral of P into dV. Okay, so what will be happening in this particular situation, we will be having P, and this P is actually varying with time. Okay, so over here, what we are having, this variation of P is happening. So P is actually varying with time, and we can say the process is not happening in quasi-static fashion. Okay, so process is also not quasi-static. So what to do under this circumstance? So under such circumstances, what we can do, I can simply write down the equation of work as nothing but equal to integration of P external into dV. Okay, because what was there, if you see, the system pressure is varying significantly. Okay, and it is oscillating with time, but the piston is mainly expanding against the external force. Okay, so that external force which is acting on the piston, that is actually our constant. So that's why whatever the work which will be done on the system, or which is done by the system, that is actually against the external pressure only. So that's why we can write down the formulation of work as nothing but P external into dV. Okay, so now depending upon the type of the process, if we are having this type of situation, we have to find relation between P external and V. So that relation has to be developed depending upon the nature of the, and once that relation is developed, then actually we can simply substitute it over here and we can integrate in order to find out the net amount of work transfer. Okay, so because this pressure over here, whatever we are getting, this is an external pressure, and this external pressure has to be calculated. So that's why we sometimes call whatever the work we are getting, we call this work as indicated work also. Okay, so why we are calling indicated work? Because we are not exactly knowing the external load. So depending upon system to system, we have to find out, we should have the indication of the external pressure which is acting on the piston, and we have to develop the relationship between that and volume. So that's why we call many times as indicated work also. Okay, Now one important thing we are having, so what we do, we write one polyentropic equation. Okay, so we write one polyentropic equation, and this polyentropic equation basically helps us in giving the relationship between pressure and volume. Okay, so what we say PV power n equal to constant, where P is pressure, V is volume, and n is called as nothing but our polyentropic index. So this n we call as polyentropic index. Now depending upon the different values of n, we are having different processes, and we are having different relationship in between pressure and volume. Okay, so let me take up the first case. So if I say take the value of n equal to 0, in that case what will be happening? PV power 0 equal to constant, and finally I will be getting that my pressure is equal to constant. If pressure is equal to constant, the work done, if I say integration 1 to 2 between two thermodynamic states, P into dV, that will be nothing but equal to P times V2 minus V1. So this type of process for which polyentropic index is equal to 0 and our pressure is constant, this process is called as isobaric process. Okay, and if I have to plot this isobaric process on PV diagram, so what will be happening? I'll be having a situation that at the initial state, volume V1, then process is happening from state 1 to 2. However, during this process, our volume, our pressure is actually remaining constant. So volume is increasing from V1 to V2, and pressure is constant. So this is a isobaric process. Then we can write another type of process as nothing but n equal to 1. So if I write n equal to 1, then what will be happening? P into V will be equal to constant. Okay. Now we know from our ideal gas equation that PV is equal to RT. Okay. So if P is equal to V equal to constant, this implies that from ideal gas equation I can write, so let me write this as small v. So from ideal gas equation I can simply write that P into V is nothing but equal to RT. So I can write RT equal to constant. Now we know that R is already a constant, so it means if n equal to 1, corresponding to that, my temperature will be constant. Okay, so it means if I go into further slide, I can explain that while my n equal to 1, at that point our temperature is constant, and this process is called as nothing but isothermal process. So a process for which temperature is constant is called as isothermal process. And what will be happening over here? PV equal to constant, so it means P will be nothing but C by V. So if you try to find out the expression for work, you will be finding W equal to integration 1 to 2 P into dV, where P will be nothing but C times dV by V 1 to 2, and this C I can write as nothing but equal to P1 V1 into ln of V2 by V1. So that is the expression of work for an isothermal process. And if you represent this process on PV diagram, you will be finding that this is your state number 1, and this is your n equal to 1 polyentropic index, and this is your state number 2. Okay, then we have one more additional process which we call as nothing but our adiabatic process. So for adiabatic process, what we are having, we have some fixed value of n. So n is nothing but equal to gamma, where gamma is equal to the ratio of Cp by Cv. So what is Cp, what is Cv, that we will try to see in subsequent discussion. Okay, so if the value of polyentropic index is equal to gamma, which is nothing but equal to the ratio of Cp by Cv, then we can call a process as our adiabatic process. Okay, and you can clearly see the work done for the adiabatic process will be nothing but equal to P1 V1. So over here, if I now drive the equation of work, so you will be finding that P into V power gamma equal to constant. So it implies P is equal to C divided by V2 power gamma. Okay. So now if you try to find out the work will be nothing but integration 1 to 2. You can write C divided by V2 power gamma into dV. So if you take C outside, you can write P1 V1 as C. Okay, and this integration will be nothing but V2 power minus gamma plus 1 divided by minus gamma plus 1, and this will be from V1 to V2, and finally I'll be finding work as nothing but P1 V1 divided by 1 minus gamma times V2 power 1 minus gamma minus V1 power 1 minus gamma. Okay, so this will be our nothing but expression of work in an adiabatic process. If you try to plot the adiabatic process on PV diagram, you will be finding that this is our n equal to 1, and if I take the value of gamma for air, so I'll be finding this as my new line, which will be applicable for a adiabatic process with n equal to gamma equal to 1.4, so which is actually applicable for air. Okay, so 1.14, so gamma equal to 1.14, which is equal to this gamma equal to 1.14 is actually applicable for air. Okay, so this is our adiabatic process. Now so it means that if I see this particular PV diagram, so I have this as my n equal to 0 isobaric process, then n equal to 1 isothermal process, then n equal to 1.14 adiabatic process, and similarly I can move towards some higher value of n approaching to infinity. Okay, so now let me try and go for a situation where our n is equal to infinity. So if I now take up n equal to infinity, in that case what will be happening? P into V power n equal to constant. So we will be having P into V power infinity equal to constant, and finally we will be finding that pressure is nothing but equal to C divided by V2 power infinity. Okay, so anything power infinity will be nothing but infinity only. So finally we will be finding that pressure for this particular case will be equal to 0. If pressure for this particular case is equal to 0, so what we will be finding? We will be finding that our work done, which is nothing but integration of P dV equal to 0. And this type of situation is actually identical to that of a constant volume process, because if we are having volume also constant, then corresponding to the constant volume, what we will be having? We will be having dV equal to 0, and finally we will be having actually work also equal to 0. So that's why by considering that analogy, we call, when our value of n is equal to infinity, we call this process as nothing but isochoric process. Okay, so we call the process with n equal to infinity as our isochoric process. So now let me show this process on PV diagram. So let me show first all the different processes whatever I have plotted on the PV diagram. So the very first process I have is an isobaric process for which n equal to 0. Then I have next process as nothing but my isothermal process for which n equal to 1. Then additionally I have another process which is n equal to gamma equal to 1.14 for air. Then I have one more process which just now I have told you that if we have the value of n equal to infinity, so in that case I'll be finding the value of pressure as 0. Okay, so pressure is going to be 0, so it means my process line, if I start from this point and my pressure is going to be 0, so my line will be something like this, and for this line our n is equal to infinity. Now what if n equal to minus infinity? If n is equal to minus infinity, in that case we will be having P as C divided by V power minus infinity, and V power minus infinity will be nothing but equal to, this whole term will be equal to infinity. So it means we may have another situation where we will be having actually infinite pressure. So when we are having infinite pressure, at that time our line will be actually moving in upward direction. Okay, so this will be my line corresponding to n equal to minus infinity. So it means that in this particular direction we have region which is varying from 0 to infinity, and in this particular zone we have actually region which varies from 0 to minus infinity. Okay, so this is how we can present different type of processes on the PV diagram corresponding to the different situations of polyentropic index. Okay, now let me define one more very important property. That important property is something which is known as specific heat. Okay, so specific heat is one important property, and we have two types of specific heat. One is specific heat at constant pressure, and another is specific heat at constant volume. Okay, so what we say that amount of heat, required to raise the temperature of 1 kg of a substance by 1 degree Celsius, that is in general known as specific heat. And if we do this process under constant pressure condition, then we call that heat as nothing but our Cp, and if we do it under constant volume, then we call this as Cv. Okay, so what we are having in general, we have the definition as specific heat. Specific heat, we are calling that the amount of heat required to change the temperature of 1 kg of a substance by 1 degree Celsius, that we call as nothing but specific heat. Okay, if we are performing this process at constant pressure, so if I say that amount of heat required to change the temperature of 1 kg of a substance by 1 degree Celsius, then we call the specific heat at constant pressure. And if we are performing this process at constant volume condition, then we call this process as specific heat at constant volume. Okay, now it means that if you talk about the general definition of the specific heat, it is nothing but, let me define first Cp, it is nothing but 1 by m, because it is required for unit mass. Okay, del Q by del T. What we are doing, we are changing the temperature. So, and for the change of temperature, we are considering over here amount of heat. Okay, so we are writing 1 by m is to specify the unit mass, del Q by del T is to specify the change amount of heat required to change temperature by 1 degree Celsius, and this process we are doing at nothing but our constant pressure. Okay, so this is generalized definition of specific heat at constant pressure. In the same way, if I write specific heat at constant volume, that will be nothing but equal to 1 by m into del Q by del T, and this del Q by del T will be happening at nothing but our constant volume. Okay, so one thing we are having at constant pressure and one thing we are having at constant volume. Now if I take up our formulation of heat, first law of thermodynamics, we know that del Q minus del W I can write as nothing but P into dV is equal to du. Okay, so that is something which we already know. So if we are working under the constant volume condition, so for constant volume, what will be happening? For constant volume, dV will be equal to 0. So my delta Q will be nothing but equal to nothing but our dU. Okay, so in that case, I can change this equation and I can write that my Cv equal to 1 by m into du by del T at constant. Okay, and if I talk about specific heat at constant pressure Cp, so for that what will be happening? My first law of thermodynamics will be del Q minus P into V2 minus V1, because the process is constant pressure. So in that case, we will be having work as P into V2 minus V1. That will be equal to U2 minus U1. Du will be nothing but U2 minus U1. And finally, we will be finding del Q equal to U2 plus PV2 minus U1 plus PV1. So this U2 plus PV2 we call as nothing but our enthalpy H2 minus U1 plus PV1. I can write H2 minus H1. So finally I'll be getting this as equal to DH. So from this I can write that my Cp equal to 1 by m into, in place of del Q I can write DH divided by del T at constant pressure. Okay, and Cv I can write as nothing but equal to 1 by m del du by del T at constant volume. Okay, so now if I say H by m will be nothing but equal to small h, specific enthalpy. Similarly, capital U by m will be nothing but small u, our specific internal energy. So finally I'll be finding expression as del dH divided by del T at constant pressure, and this as d small u divided by del T at constant volume. Okay, so now one important point I would like to mention over here. If you talk about specific heat, you will be finding that specific heat is nothing but, it will appear to you that while we have started our the fundamental definition, from the fundamental definition, specific heat was becoming the function of heat Q. It was becoming function of amount of heat transfer Q. But so if it is a function of amount of heat transfer, we could not have called it as a property. But finally, if you see, if you just do few manipulations, you will be finding that Cp ultimately becomes the function of all the thermodynamic properties, enthalpy, temperature, and pressure. In the same way, specific volume is also becoming the function of U, T, and V. So all the thermodynamic properties. So that's why I can call that my Cp and Cv is nothing but, I can call these as the thermodynamic properties of the system. So Cp and Cv are also nothing but our thermodynamic properties. Okay. Now we know that our H equal to U plus PV. Okay. So from here, if I write DH will be equal to du plus P into dV plus V into dP. So now this is a very important equation, and based on this important equation, actually we can specify the value of specific heat for different mediums. Okay, so what are the different mediums? Solid, liquid, and gas. So if I consider the case of a solid or liquid, for solids and liquids, what will be happening? For the case of solids and liquids, these are of incompressible nature. So if solids and liquids are of incompressible nature, because of that, what will be happening? dV will be equal to 0. Okay, and at the same point of time, solids and liquids are also having high density. So these have high density. So because of the high density, specific volume of solids and liquids will also be nothing but negligible. Okay, so if these two things are negligible, I can clearly write for solid and liquid that dH equal to du. If for solids and liquids dH is equal to du, it means our specific heat at constant pressure is nearly equal to constant heat at specific volume, and we simply call this term as C, specific heat. So that's why one important conclusion we have made from here, that for solids and liquids, specific heat of constant pressure and specific heat and constant volume are nothing but same. Okay, so now I will stop at this point, and we will further discuss about the specific heat of gases in our next lecture.